Greetings, my online learners for GERO 365. This is week 2, beginning with Monday, January 21st. And what I'd like to do is to go through the key points of your week 1 materials and then do a brief introduction to what you will be studying and looking at in week 2. So week 1 folder contains several videos that I posted that help to just reinforce and provide a little bit more backdrop to the main concepts that are being looked at in the first reading assignment in your book. The first video that I assigned is the video titled Why Study Aging? And the speaker talks about the fact that our society is aging, and that we need to study aging because there will be an economic and financial impact, to a negative impact economically and financially to our society if we don't study ways in which we can help people live longer, healthier. Not just live longer, but live longer, healthier. So we need to study aging and the process of aging, and we need to develop programs and initiatives that will help people to live healthier. The fact of the matter is that our society is aging, and that is reflected in the second video that's entitled The Aging Crash Course. There are 2 reasons why our society is aging. The first one is that people are living longer. And the second reason is that there are fewer babies being born in the United States. There is a chart that I posted in the week 1 folder, chart of live births per woman. And if you take a look at the United States, you will see a very marked decrease in the number of babies that women are having. So when you have fewer births of younger people, or babies that would become younger people, you have fewer of people at the younger end of the spectrum, but then you have this other end of the spectrum where you have many aging people who are just getting older. The average age in our society is increasing. And there is a chart on, it's Exhibit P2 on page 26, Roman numeral 26 in your book, that talks about the demographic transition theory. So if you look at this chart, this is the early stages of our society, and you will see that the younger aged people are represented at the bottom of the pyramid. So we have a much more healthy population of younger people and a very, very small population of older people. And that's because back in the early 1900s, people weren't living that long. So people were dying off, and very few people were actually living to be 85 years and above. Then you see, as time marches on in the United States, what's happening here is that we've got fewer people at the bottom end of the age pyramid, but then we have more people in the middle ages of the pyramid, and yet again, fewer people at the top end. So we can see this demographic transition of younger people aging, but yet still not living real long. Okay, so now we come down to more modern time, and this is also reflected in the video that is in week 1 folder by Laura Karstensen, who says our demographic chart of our country is actually turning into a rectangle. So here's what that means. It means at the bottom of the chart, you've got the young. In the middle, you've got the middle-aged people, but look what's happening at the top. We have more people that are living longer. So we have this demographic transition. And that's one of the concepts from week 1 is the demographic transition theory. And I want to make sure that you understand that. You will have a learning assessment on this topic of the week 1 and week 2. You will have a learning assessment at the end of week 2, and demographic transition is the attempt to explain why changes happen in the demographics of a society. And so for our particular, in the United States, it's because people are living longer and we're having few births. So the aging crash course just reinforces that concept as well. Then we move into Laura Karstensen video, which is entitled The New Culture of Aging. And again, she talks about how our demographics are changing and that we as a society need to open our minds to the fact that we are going to be living with a lot of older people. And she talks about how are we going to cope with this, and asking the question, why do we fear an aging society? We're locked into fear and images of decline, and we see aging as a problem that needs to be fixed. So we only see the losses and overlook the opportunities in the aging process. She talks about how our society, for the most part, has been organized and built around the young. Because what did we just look at? That first age chart that I showed you, where people just didn't live very long back in the early 1900s. So society was organized around young people. Well, with all of these older people now coming of age, we need to be thinking about programs and services and basically reimagining our communities and reimagining our transportation system and access to healthcare so that all of these older people can have a society that will support their aging process. And that is all very much tied into what that first video about why study aging is. If we don't help people live healthy, happy, productive, independent lives towards in their aging years, it's going to have a negative financial and economic impact on individuals as well as society as a whole. So Laura Karstensen is saying we need a new culture of aging. And that's a big part of what this course is going to be about. It's going to be about thinking about aging in a whole different way, in a way that we don't have to focus on all of the negative, that there are many positives to aging and growing old. And we have to rethink societally what we think about aging. And for the most part, I think you might agree with me that we live in an kind of an anti-aging society. We fear aging. We think about only the losses that are tied into the aging process, but we need to spend more time talking about the wonderful opportunities as well. So I want you to understand population aging and the demographic transition theory. And the next video is talking about the life course perspective on aging. I mentioned that in my introductory video, and it's really the theme of our entire course is that aging doesn't just happen in a moment in time. Aging and the process of aging begins when we are born. And it is a accumulation of our entire life course. So the video that is labeled Life Course Perspective just reinforces this idea that all of our life events, all of the choices that we make in our life, the policies that are developed and implemented by our government, the discriminations that we have faced throughout our lifetime, all influence how we are going to age and what our experience in aging is going to be. So the life course perspective is a theory that essentially says we cannot consider what aging is like or what aging is going to be unless we consider it within the whole context of our lives. And it's a pretty complicated issue because there are, when you talk about aging, you can't just think of it from a Caucasian, middle, upper income, social class perspective. We have to think of the aging process from all perspectives. What will the experience be of somebody who has achieved a high school education and didn't have the opportunities to go to college? What is the aging experience going to be like for a woman of color who has grown up in a urban afflicted area and didn't have the opportunities for education or employment? We have to think about all of the different ethnic groups and what their experience of aging is going to be. So this population of older people that we have in our society is a very diverse group of people, not just Caucasian males and females. So the life course perspective, I want to be sure that you do look at that video because I think it does a really nice job of somewhat introducing this concept of how we have to look at aging in the life course from different lenses. So there was that video, and let's see, what else? So I think those covers the videos that are in week 1 and the key points of those videos. I want to make sure that you understand the theories of aging, the modernization theory, the continuity theory, activity theory, and disengagement theory. The modernization theory is one theory that was put forward, and there's a lot of criticisms about this theory. And I put an article also in week 1 that articulates what some of those criticisms are. But essentially, it addresses what is the status of older adults in our society. Do we value older adults, and what has happened to their status? And it's kind of like reflecting back to sort of the early pioneer days when the older people were revered in their families, and they were taken care of, and they were brought into the homes of the younger people, and they were very much valued because they were the institutional knowledge about the land that they were living on, and passing that knowledge of farming and agriculture and the livelihood of people back in the pioneer days was passed on from the older generation to the younger generation. So it is said that people back in the day very, very much valued and revered older adults. The modernization theory is saying, well, since those days are kind of gone and we don't really need to rely on the wisdom and the experience of older adults because of all of the technology that we have now, older adults have lost their esteem in society. So that is the modernization theory, and that is one of the things that your discussion board from last week was on this topic. So I will be interested to read what you think about that theory. The next theory is the continuity theory, and that's one theory of aging that says, people really don't change that much when they get old. People want to keep with the same activities that they've done. They want to continue with the same kind of life course. So people don't all of a sudden up and change their personalities. If they've been really active physically, they want to be active physically in their older years. If they were really involved in their church in the younger years, they want to stay involved in church. If they had a hobby, a sport, something like that in their younger years, they're going to want to continue and have a continuity in their aging years, which then is the next theory is the complete opposite of that, which is called the disengagement theory. And there is a theory that it's natural and it's normal and it's healthy economically for older people to somewhat disengage from society and pull back from society, and that it's actually mutual, that society also disengages from the older person, and that it's normal and natural, and we should embrace that and understand that this is just kind of what happens. Well, there's also a lot of research that says that actually is not the case, that as a whole, older people don't want to just check out of society. They're not just taking to their recliners and waiting to die. Older people will find new roles and they'll find new purpose in their life. So that is disengagement theory. And the last theory is the activity theory, which is somewhat similar to the continuity theory. And the activity theory says simply, the more active a person is in their older years, the more they will have a healthy aging experience. So we want and need to keep older people involved in society. We need to find new ways to tap into the wisdom of older adults. We need to find ways to more incorporate them into society, and that by doing so and keeping them active, it will keep them happier and healthier, and we will in turn have an economic and financial dividend from investing in older adults and keeping them active in society. I think it's somewhat reasonable and makes sense that the more active people are, the more engaged, and they have a reason to live each day. They have a purpose to get out of bed. That's a better situation than somebody who just kind of checks out. So those are the 4 theories. I just want to be sure that you understand what those theories are. Understand the Pew Research. Wait, I'm getting ahead to the next area. I want you to understand what the concept of a cohort is. And a cohort is a group of people that were born within a kind of a defined period of time that sort of, age together. So there are the World War II generation is a cohort. The millennial generation is a cohort, and then there's cohorts within cohorts. But a lot of times when we're talking about these theories, we are talking about a lot of people. And these theories of aging, none of them individually fully explain anybody's experience in aging. So no one theory is going to apply to everybody. So you have to understand the limitations of these theories as well, that these theories explain to a certain degree what might happen when somebody ages, but it certainly doesn't answer the question for an entire cohort. I also want you to understand the term rites of passage, that there are certain markers in a person's life that sort of propels them to kind of the next level. So a rite of passage would be graduating from college. You now have a degree and you begin your career. A rite of passage is retirement and leaving your work and moving on to do something else in your life. Rite of passage is getting married or getting divorced. There are certain significant events that happen in our lives that help to really define our life and are significant enough that it impacts how our aging experience is going to unfold. So rites of passage, the theories, life course, role loss is also a theory or a concept that's introduced at the beginning of your book. So make sure you read about that. Okay, I think I covered the main topics of week 1. Let me just move ahead here real quick. I want to talk also real quick about a topic or a concept called compression of morbidity. I somewhat mentioned that at the beginning of this video about why study aging and helping people live longer, healthier. That's what compression of morbidity is called. It's keeping the time frame of infirmity and illness, compressing it so that an older person is living a longer period of time in a healthy state. And so compression of morbidity is basically taking that period of illness and infirmity and compressing it to a smaller period of time. So the book talks about that as well. So let's move into week 2. I'll give you just a real quick preview. You'll be reading pages 29 to 52, and we're going to be talking about if old age can have meaning. And what is successful aging? How do we define successful aging? So I have always been a proponent of looking at older adults and helping them find their new place in society, or helping them find a new role, and helping them to have a reason to get up in the morning. And if you think back to my introductory video, you may remember that I spent 30 years working in nursing facilities and assisted living communities, and helping my organizations to change their philosophy of working with older adults who are, say, 85 years and above. We can't just treat them as though they are no longer important in society. It's not enough to just make sure they're clean and fed and dry and have and have a warm place to live. They need meaning and purpose in their lives up until the day that they die. So this next chapter in the book discusses and explores if old age can have meaning. So that's what you have to look forward to in week 2. Also know that you will have a learning assessment at the end of week 2, which will cover week 1 and 2 materials. So next week, which I know this gets a little confusing because I'm lecturing sort of a week, behind. But my next video will be January 28th, and I will be then talking about more about these concepts of meaning in old age. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am just at the other end of the computer, and I look forward to talking to you again in week 3. All right, take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.